Hey, what's up? I'll tell you in a minute. What is going on with this plant? You see this plant all over the place, but no one really knows what it's about. It's got green and it's got brown on it. But is it a plant?
Let's get into it. Yo, welcome to another episode of In a Minute with Evan Lovett, coming to you live from the I Am Studios in the heart of LA. Today, we have an incredible guest, Fred Armisen, one of the longest tenured members ever on Saturday Night Live. Also the creator of Portlandia, the creator of Espookys, and known as quote unquote, the world's greatest character actor. So we're going to get into all of that. And of course, his deep-rooted musical background, which was the catapult for all of this. And in addition, he has a lot of feelings about Los Angeles. So you know we got to dive into that. But first, we got a word from our sponsor, Culver City Toyota, right there on Washington Boulevard. Best dealership around. Great place to go get used, pre-owned, RAV4, Prius, Tacoma, you name it. Go talk to George, the general manager. He's going to give you $500 in dealer cash on your next Toyota. And Fred, I got to thank you for being here. So thank you and welcome.
My pleasure. First of all, about Culver City, great place to visit. So if you're going down to that Toyota, they've sort of rebuilt Culver City a lot.
Yeah.
I was gonna say a little, but there's some great places, and there's a museum there called the Museum of Jurassic Technology, which is, it defies description, because anything that I say is not going to do it justice to what kind of an experience it is. So I'll just say that, like, check out Culver City, but if you have some time, go to the Museum of Jurassic Tech.
Okay, explain it to me. It's like a fictionalized account of a museum. I know you said it defies words, but how would you describe it?
It's more of, it's like an oasis. It's like this, like, because it's kind of like the opposite of like the sunniness of Southern California. It's like very dark, and it's like what presents itself as a historical museum.
Okay.
And it's sort of like a cultural historical museum, but it's more than that. So like, it's very specific. Like you'll go, they had this history of this opera singer, and you just see, you know, all these old photographs and stuff, and it's beautiful. The sound design is beautiful. Picture like going to a place that has like lots of drapes, and the sound design is great. And you go through it and you have the experience of going to a museum. You're like, little placards, you kind of read about different histories and things, and names. You're like, I'm trying to remember that name. Wow. 1800s, incredible. Later, you discover, and I'm sure everyone knows this by now, that it's more of like an art piece.
Okay. Right.
Instead of it being real history. And I love it. Like there's this sort of heavy message of like, you can't believe everything you read.
Right.
But I'm also like, I like it just as a fun thing. Like it's like a different type of entertainment.
I've been told to check it out, and I've seen pictures and looked at. I feel like one of the exhibits that I've seen was something like a 5-legged dinosaur kind of deal, or it's, you know, where it has something of that ilk. Where again, like I always perceived it as a fictionalized, maybe a performance. I guess it's not performative because they're not performing,
no.
But some sort of art. Again, the word that keeps coming to mind is fictionalized, but that might not be fully accurate.
I mean, that's accurate, but it's just so well done.
Yeah.
And so beautiful. It just has like things about like old wives' tales and things, and it's just all made up. But also it seems like not totally made up. Like there's some reality where you're like, oh, I think this might be kind of real. And it looks great. It feels great. And it's easy to get to. I'm not sure if I'm right about this, but I think it's only open Thursday through Sunday.
It was definitely interesting hours, because the one time I did a story on Palms, actually, and it's Palms adjacent. And I was like, I'm going to go in here, and it was closed during the day. I don't remember what day of the week, so it does have it. And one last thing on Culver City. This whole interview isn't going to be about Culver City, but one thing I must say, well designed, clean, it's bumping, a lot of good place to eat. It's a really annoying place to drive, even by LA standards.
Yeah.
Culver City is probably the most difficult community, where I am constantly like gritting my teeth and white knuckling the wheel, because I don't want to blame the bike lanes. the bollards in the road, but it is a very tough place to navigate. So I just want to get that on record.
Yeah, there's something to do also with some of those turns. Like some of it's diagonal.
Yes. Yeah.
Some stuff kind of crisscrosses in a way that I'm like, this is not working.
Right, correct.
And, we're used to traffic. Traffic I can deal with,
100%.
fine. But there's something illogical. I'm like, I did not want to end up on Venice Boulevard right now. This is not, or Washington or whatever it is. I'm like, this is not what I was going for. And now I'm here and now I got to turn around.
I think illogical was the best and most accurate term there. But outside of Culver City, so I want to talk about your journey and your evolution in getting to Los Angeles, because you have an extremely fascinating and very LA background.
Well, before we continue, I just want to say, LA in a minute is what is putting social media to good use. There's so much stuff out, and I understand, there's all kinds of content out there, but yours is so informative and so succinct at the same time. And it's about something that I love. And I just want to say, it is absolutely really useful and artistic. The way even like the uniformity in which you present it, that you're like, your head pops up and you got everything behind you. It's kind of like, that's relaxing because it's like, you're not trying to outdo yourself every time. You're like, this is how I do this. And it is so useful.
Well, thank you. And we are leaving that in here.
Yeah.
No,
please do.
Thank you very much.
I'm such a big fan of it. I wouldn't be here otherwise.
Genuinely, thank you. And that's meaningful coming from anybody, but coming from you specifically, thank you very, very much. But let's get back to you. So you have a very, very fascinating story. We're going to get to how you came to Los Angeles, but you're Venezuelan, German, Korean.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Correct.
That's pretty awesome. That's LA in a nutshell right there. But so explain that heritage and explain how somebody with that heritage was born in Mississippi.
My dad is from Germany.
Okay.
My mom is from Venezuela. That's where they both grew up. My dad's dad was Japanese. We discovered later that he was really Korean through just DNA and searching history and stuff. He was actually, which was a common thing. There were Koreans who moved to Japan who changed their nationality because of racism against Koreans. Wow. But really my dad culturally was German, and he went to college. He just got accepted at a University of Southern Mississippi.
Okay. So
he was a foreign exchange student, not an exchange, a foreign student. And then my mom, by coincidence also, I guess it wouldn't be by coincidence, by the way life works out, she also went to the same university. They met, they had me, and then moved up to New York where my dad got a job. So that's how that worked out.
Have you ever met another Venezuelan German person, first of all?
Oh, a couple. As I go through life, people will introduce themselves to me. And sometimes it's just similar. They're like, I'm Venezuelan Dutch, or,
Okay.
But it once in a while it does come up. As a side note, we'll do Venezuela in a minute. There's a colony of Germans in Venezuela up in the mountains, and they look German, but they don't speak any German. They're like genetically German, but it's called Colonia Tobar. It's like this, little German area there.
Okay.
Anyway,
Have you been?
Yep.
Wow.
And it's shocking. You're like, oh my God, I'm kind of in Europe.
That's incredible. And they're speaking Spanish, right?
Oh yeah, fully. They're Venezuelan.
And you're fluent in Spanish, obviously. Los Espookys.
Yeah, fluent-ish, meaning like I think I'm fluent.
Yeah.
But then when I really talk to people from Chile or Venezuela, they sort of point out this sort of little, I have to slow down at some sentences.
My wife is Mexican, and she sort of reluctantly was a Spanish speaker. Her parents kind of forced the issue, and she sort of resented it growing up. So she kind of lost it throughout her 20s. And then in her career, she's an interior designer. She encountered people. I'm living in Los Angeles, and she's like, I'm so glad I retained the Spanish. And, you pick it back up because that was her first language. She was fluent. But a lot of people say, not a lot of people, but she encounters people that are like, you're fluent, but it's not like really fluent. So
that's exactly how it would be. But I tried to learn it as much as I could. It's a real strength to learn another language. I recommend it.
I tell that to my son. We're trying to raise him bilingual. He's in immersion school, and it's a tough conversation to have with a 10, soon to be 11-year-old, that this is so important, and this is a gift, and this is a privilege, and this is going to be an advantage. And when you're not speaking it at home, though, you know, when he hears, because I promised my wife's dad, when I asked for her hand in marriage, just like, I'm going to learn Spanish and blah, blah. And I went about it a certain way where I would take notes, and I had like all these documents, and at the time it was like notebooks full of my notes, and, you know, I'd read it and I'd say, but that's not the same as speaking it. So I developed a vocabulary. And then finally, when my wife got pregnant, I was like, oh no, I understand Spanish, but I didn't want to be one of those people that's like, I understand it, but I don't really know how to speak it, and blah, blah. So I finally made that extra effort to start speaking it more. And now I'm like, okay, I wouldn't by any means say I'm fluent, but I can absolutely have conversations and interact with people. And it's even such an advantage on that level. So yes, public announcement, public service announcement, learn a second language, teach your kids a second language, huge advantage.
Yeah, even if you're not that great at it, whatever level you're at, great.
Yeah.
That's better than you were before. And also there's more time.
What do you mean, more time?
In the next year, you learn a little more. The next year, and all of a sudden, it'll be 10 years later. It'll be like, you know, actually, I do speak it pretty well.
Yes, you don't need to do it overnight.
Yeah.
And speaking of not overnight, okay, let's trace your sort of path to success, right? All right, you got to New York. Your family moved there. You also lived in Chicago for a while. Is that correct?
Chicago because I was following my dream of being a drummer.
Okay.
And the band that I was in mostly moved to Chicago, or one member did, and then two of us did, and I was there for a long time.
But from New York?
Yep.
Were your formative years in New York?
Yes. And then my 20s were in Chicago.
Okay.
But just, you know, I don't want to clog this up too much with information, but my family lived in Brazil for a couple of years. My dad worked in Rio de Janeiro, and as a family vacation, we came to Los Angeles.
Okay.
This is like 1976. Yes. We came here he's like, we'll go to Disneyland and Universal Studios. And we went as a family. And even then, I fell in love with LA as a little kid. And I guess it's easy because it's Universal Studios, right. But still, something about LA, I was like, I just loved it. I loved the idea of like studios, and there was something about it that looked like everything on TV. So as I was watching the $6 Million Man and you know, all those shows or whatever it was, there was something about the city that like it looked like it did on TV.
That's excellent. So you fell in love with it then. You were too. Obviously, you weren't going to autonomously to move at that point.
No. But the concept of a city even was like, wow, there are other places to be. So I just want to drop that in there.
Yeah.
So I don't have to go back to it later. But
so it's an affair going on 50 years at this point, right? Okay.
And there's also like, you know, psychologically, my dad traveled a lot, you know, he worked a lot. So there's also like the psychological thing of like, we didn't do many family vacations like that. So there's that connection too. Like, wow, that was a time where we all sort of got along and were together. And so there's that aspect.
Your dad worked for IBM,
Yep.
Is that correct?
Yep.
And then your mom was a teacher.
Yep.
Do you have siblings?
Younger sister and older half brother in Germany.
Oh, wow.
My dad had a kid in Germany.
Okay.
And I've got a younger sister who lives in Northern California.
So that doesn't exactly make you a middle child per se.
It depends. No. I suppose because of the household, I was not a middle. It was just the two of us.
Okay. Interesting. And then with the travel, your dad was traveling for IBM, global powerhouse, no joke. Yeah. Your mom a teacher. Did either their vocations or professions kind of rub off on you or have any influence on you?
No.
Do you remember any of that?
Not really. Some of my dad's family, like his dad, were in entertainment, but not really. We didn't have like really that much of an artistic house. Although my mom introduced me to music, and so that, you know, there were still aspects of it, but no, neither of them were artists.
Okay, so let's talk about the music, because that was, I don't know if it's your first love, but that was the first real pursuit artistically for you, correct? Yep. So that came a little bit from your mom introducing it, but how did you fall in love with it? And then where did that path sort of take you?
This is the 70s, so even though the Beatles were broken up, my mom still introduced me to Beatles records, and it moved me in a way that was more than just like, oh, I like music. It was more like, I want to disappear into whatever this is.
Yeah.
Especially drumming. And then as I got older, I got into other bands like The Who and stuff. And then I got into punk. And once I got into punk, most of it was from England, but there was a faction from Los Angeles that I really admired, the LA scene.
Yeah.
Because to me, the New York scene was a little, there's like an anger to it that I didn't identify with as much. But LA bands or San Pedro bands or whatever it is, and SST Records, I was like, this seems colorful and fun. And, you know, the Go-Go's came from the punk scene here. Even you might not think of them as a punk band, but they were certainly part of that scene. That positivity I really identified with.
See, and that's what's interesting. So I don't know much about punk. People that watch this show know that I am a hip hop person, but I know that LA has a huge punk foundation, culture, the clubs, the bands, the scenes, and an upcoming episode of LA in a minute, by the way, about the punk scene, because it was such an important culture and still to this day is. What are some of the other bands that resonated with you, like coming from LA?
I would say X,
right?
You know, that might have been the biggest one. The Minutemen, who turned into Firehose. And even though it's San Pedro, I always put them sort of in the same.
San Pedro's LA.
Yeah, it's in there. And then I would say that, I mean, the Germs, you know, were like a seminal part of it. But I still I appreciate them more now, the Germs and Fear, naturally.
Okay.
But then later, I got into, even though they're considered kind of a ska band, Fishbone. Fishbone was like a big, and the Red Hot Chili Peppers. To me, however funky or ska that you think they are, I'm like, to me, they're part of the punk scene.
There's those roots, right?
Yeah.
Lineage that you can trace. Absolutely.
Yeah. So I was just way into it, and just like, even in movies, they depicted it kind of an exaggeration of it, but I still liked the vibe of it. And all the clubs and stuff. And then when I got older and I got to play in LA, it was just like, I just loved coming here. So like, it was like sort of like a homecoming. I'm back in LA.
Okay. So tell me about so Trenchmouth was the band, was your band that sort of got big, developed a following. How did you get into a band? You strike me as somebody that maybe was quiet and introspective in school. Let me start there. Is that accurate?
No,
or were you?
No, I know. Yeah, it's like I present in the same way that like I do comedy. You know, I may seem sort of like, I mean, even though I'm not very loud.
Yeah,
I'm definitely
a presence,
and I like being on stage.
Okay, so
it's kind of like, and the choice of being a drummer reflects that. Drums are like in the back, sitting down, but you're making a lot of noise. Like there's very like. It's like don't look at me, look at me. There's like, it's both at the same time. Like I'm not the lead singer, but you're gonna know that I'm on stage.
So how did Trenchmouth develop, get success, start touring?
We just kept touring. We just kept playing, kept recording, and we played all over the country.
Yeah.
So as much as like I sometimes say like, oh, we didn't make it or whatever, I'm like, at the same time, we certainly got around and went overseas and we had some great experiences. And I did learn a lot about, using a microphone, being on stage, all that stuff really contributed to it.
What was the epiphany? What was that moment that you're like, I need to really be, in front of the camera more, be the main event, if you will?
It kind of came from, my band wasn't going as quickly as I wanted it to. There were bands around the same time in Chicago who were like really getting famous quickly. Not that fame is everything, but I could feel
it's a measure of success.
I was like, I must have been 30 or something. And I'm like, we're not really doing it the way, everyone else is. And
was Chicago a good scene, by the way?
Great. Oh, really? Fantastic. Really. It had its own sound, and there was a really good recording studio scene, or is, but like there was like, people had these recording studios and there's a real love of recording.
Okay.
And, each studio kind of had its own scene all around it. So it was great. The venues were great. You know, it was us. I don't know. It was me. You know, maybe I still to this day think I just wasn't cut out to be a composer for anything serious. I think I could do parody music. I think I could do fake bands.
Okay.
But I don't think I have that genetic thing of like, I'm a songwriter.
Right. Okay.
Which is great. There's people to do that, but I'm not that person. Anyway, I started making, I was married to this woman from England, Sally.
Okay.
And she was in this band called the Mekons. And she introduced me to like all these different kinds of comedy from England. And some of it was sort of hidden camera based. So we started like, we bought a video camera and we went to this festival in Austin called South by Southwest.
Yeah.
And she would sort of film me interviewing people, doing fake interviews with me as different characters and stuff. We edited this video.
Why were you even inspired to do these fake character interviews? Just something had to trigger that.
Something was like, I think some of it was like a little bit of frustration at the music business. I'm like, we did everything right. Why, you know?
Yeah.
And then also these comedies that she introduced me to, where I was like, oh, what's that tone? This British tone to stuff that was kind of subtle in a way. So I just did these kind of interviews with bands, never making fun of them. Like I just kept it more about like doing these characters.
Yeah.
And the video, this is 1998, that we made sort of made the rounds. We edited it and I was showing them at clubs and stuff. And the sort of vibes around it felt like momentum. It felt like, something's happening.
Wow.
People were excited. I came here and I showed it at Spaceland.
Okay.
And people turned out for it, just showing it on a projector. So from that, there was excitement and I could feel already like, this is something, this is how it should be going.
Had you done characters, any kind of performance in that regard, anytime growing up?
Zero, just in the van with my band members,
Come
you know.
on.
Oh yeah. You know.
Did you know you were funny? Did people say you were funny?
Yeah. There was like, they would say that I'm funny. But I will say that my band members were also funny. I feel like they did characters too and whatever. But there was just like a, thing of like, okay, this makes more sense. And that was like 1998 to 99, 2000. And before I knew it, I was working for HBO doing these little videos through people who had seen my work. And then all of a sudden in 2002, I was auditioning for SNL. And I was living here. And this is where LA plays another huge part. I moved to LA because I could. I was like, I no longer have to live anywhere.
Yes.
I love this city. I moved here. And someone told me, a friend of mine said, there's this club called Largo. It's on Fairfax. There's a really good scene going on. And I went there alone. I was like, what is this? And I started doing stand-up there as characters.
Yeah.
And I got the attention of Bob Odenkirk. He would be doing shows there. And then he got me on this pilot. Like, all these things happened really quickly that were like people supporting me and just helping me out.
Where'd you move to first in Los Angeles?
Los Feliz.
Wow. Right off the bat. Whoops, sorry. What made you want to move to?
I had my friend Dennis lived there already. He's like, you could move in with me. So I had a room.
Easy. And what'd you think of Los Feliz?
I loved it. I loved it so much because I would just walk to a little sushi place, walk to get groceries. There was something about it that was just like, and I'm not even a sun person, but there was something about it that just felt, there was something pleasant about living. I kind of didn't really have like a job really, but somehow LA is kind of like, don't worry about a job. I don't know what it is. LA is like, what do you think you are? I don't know. I design plants and take pictures of them. Great.
Yeah.
That's what you do. Knock yourself out. And somehow, I know it's a little dreamy. I do feel like that's what LA is about.
Look, I have said that Big Lebowski, right, to take a classic, the dude can only exist in LA, but he really can exist. Somehow he has a bungalow in Santa Monica, no job, wearing sandals, a robe, writing a check for like $2 at a grocery store.
Yeah.
But you're like, you know what? Like that could actually be a person that exists in LA and in multiple different communities. And yes, I know housing and inflation and all this kind of stuff nowadays,
No,
but
I'm not diminishing that.
Yeah.
Of course, people struggle. Of course.
but somehow that guy exists though.
Yes.
You know?
I'm saying there's a version of a person where you can be like, I'm a stunt person. I cater movies, you know, like there's so many specific things. You know, I'm a dialect coach.
Yes.
And they're, you know, live in a nice place. And I'm like, well, I guess that's their job, you know?
Okay, so go back to the stand-up. This has always intrigued me. You had the experience being in a band and touring. You're clearly not shy, but stand-up is a different animal, right? Like the spotlight's on you. And my friend Jir, closest friend since birth, actually, he always says that the job of a comedian, somebody's in the audience like, okay, make me laugh, funny man.
Yeah.
You know, and like can come in a terrible mood, but that is your job at that moment.
Yeah.
How was that? Coming from the background of having a little bit of foundation of performing.
I really loved it because, you know, I grew up on music that had some comedy in it, like say Devo.
Okay.
Who you can think of as an LA band in a way, but they're from Ohio, but they really based themselves in LA. Talking Heads, that kind of thing. So I would often go on stage with a musical instrument. So that's sort of like, that helped a little bit.
Yeah.
And because I spent so many years in a band, sometimes playing to empty houses, I had nothing to lose. So I wasn't like, audience, please help me. This is my last hope. I was like, I've been through stuff already. I want to make this moment a fun moment, even if it's weird.
Yeah.
Even if it's me convincing you that I'm this character, and I'll be done in 5 minutes. I didn't linger on stage. I wasn't like, I didn't make it an ego trip of, I didn't make it indulgent. I was like, there's a show tonight here at Largo. There's 5 other comedians. I'm just going to be on for a little while. Here's a moment where I'm dressed up like this character.
I think that's something that you do so well. And I just kind of put it together right now. I'm sure I'm not the first person that said, you're not indulgent. There's almost too little of you, but like leave the audience, or me in this case, wanting more, where your characters are so strong, so memorable, and then they move on. You know, obviously there's some recurring characters and everything on Saturday Night Live, but that's a really important element. You were always conscious of that.
Yeah, or I was conscious of it. I was subconscious, and then as I kept going, even to this day, I think I do best if I'm sort of in and then just quick, you know, make it quick.
This is such a grand question, but you have so many strong characters. You use the word weird. A lot of them are very, unique. Where did the inspiration? And again, there's so many, but
I have no idea.
Does it just strike you? You're laying down one night, you're eating breakfast, something, and all of a sudden you're like, this would be funny?
It just happens like, it feels a little supernatural where I'm like, all of a sudden I'll be like, I think this is a person. It's almost like I wonder, I'm like, oh, is this a kind of person? Yeah, I think it is. And then as I test it out on people, I'll sort of say like, you know, this type of person. And then if someone goes like, oh my God, I know someone like that. Then I think this might have some possibilities to it.
Look, I got to talk about one in particular. I kind of wanted to save it, but it just keeps coming to mind. We have to discuss Stewart and the Californians.
Yeah.
What was the concept of that? And what has the response been, especially as somebody who's an LA resident? Just give me any overall thoughts about that character.
I can give you
legendary. Yeah.
I can give you a million thoughts because it is a million things at once.
Yeah.
And what do people say? People either go, I live in LA, and that's exactly right. I was just talking about directions today. Or they'll go, I was visiting LA, and oh my God, we got into that discussion. So on SNL, I lived in New York, but the whole time, every summer, I come back to LA like everybody does. And it's a work thing, but it's also like, man, that's just what you do.
Yeah.
And we used to come back, in the fall, and me and Bill Hader, and I remember Keenan, Andy, we'd talk about LA, and then somehow it would morph into going, it took Barham over to him. So it just was hovering around as an idea, our little California talk. And then I did a stand-up show with Dana Carvey.
Yeah.
And he was telling me about his son. And his son was so lovable, and that if he got pulled over, or when he got pulled over, he was like, Dana would be kind of irritated, but he would win him over because he'd go like, "No, but Dad," and Dana's impression of like the way he did his mouth, like, but Dad, I loved so much. And so then it just sort of turned into a sketch, and all of a sudden, there was enough in there. And this is like, whenever I hear writers talk about how they write a sketch, I'm always like, it seems tedious, but I'll tell the story anyway. Is that there's one writer I worked with all the time, this guy, James Anderson.
Okay.
And I came in and I was like, I want to do something with directions in California, in LA, something like really California, something with directions. And he was like, what if it's a soap opera? And then boom, that was it.
Perfect.
Which is, for any of you improv people out there, if you could find someone to work with, it's great.
First, tell me about the audition for Saturday Night Live and how that developed. Because again, to me, you're synonymous with Saturday Night Live. My parents grew up, by the way, or I grew up with my parents being huge Saturday Night Live fans. They had all the VHS tapes, going back to Chevy Chase and Belushi and all that stuff. So I grew up huge SNL person.
And who is your cast?
Wow, man. Okay, so for me, I'm like the Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd.
Really?
Yeah, because that's my parents. They used to be, so my parents were hippies. They grew up in that generation and they embraced all that kind of stuff. And that, I think, is like not one of the first variety shows, but one of the first variety shows, at least for their demographic, let's say. So I grew up all the time, not just on Saturday Night Lives, but again, these tapes were playing on repeat and my parents would be smoking a lot of weed and doing all that stuff. So, and I just learned was the first real like humor I grew up with, aside from their Richard Pryor, George Carlin, like that era stand-up comedian. So that's just the one that I don't want to say I identify with the most, but I recognize like the greatness of, but obviously look, like the Chris Farley era, like incredible.
Yeah.
But when I came into my own, it's your era. So that's when I start relating more. But to tell you the truth, like the closest to my heart is like the OG. I don't know what you call it.
Yeah.
But like the early, SNL. But yeah.
You don't have to put this in, but how old are you?
46 now.
46, so you're like 10 years younger than me.
Yes, before my time, but that's what
But I was the same. Like, I kind of missed that cast by a little bit.
Yeah.
Because I was a little too young. But that's the cast I saw first because of my mom.
Right. And again, it's also, look, I had an extremely close relationship with my parents. I'm an only child. So they were like wildly supportive, everything.
Yeah.
But also I looked up to them. So when they were like, this is the greatest, this is the funniest, of course I was like, oh, this is the greatest, that's the funniest. So that's what I kind of
just is.
Yeah. And
there's nothing like it.
Yeah. And honestly, like
there's nothing like hearing their voices, like
Chevy Chase.
Yeah. Dan Aykroyd.
Yeah, right.
Lorraine Newman. Like something in their voices, I'm immediately like into it. I'm like, whatever weird thing they're doing. So you're asking about the audition. When I auditioned, I, like yourself, I'm about to make the same point. I also grew up on SNL. I love SNL. Still watch it.
Yeah.
I love it.
It's been good recently, by the way. I know it went through a couple of down periods, and I guess that's historically when the casts are getting acclimated and all that. But man, recently they're on fire.
Fantastic.
Like, holy cow. Okay, sorry. Go on.
Yeah, it's in such a sweet spot. I love it.
Yeah.
But and I had this similar relationship to SNL, but I feel like when Mike Myers was on, was like when it spoke to me in a different way. That's when I was like, and Dana Carvey, of course, and Phil Hartman, but I mean everybody. But something about Mike Myers made me feel a little bit like it was speaking to me privately. I was like, they're trying to tell me something, like a crazy person. Like, something's up with this show. Like, how do they know that I would love this so much? So going into it, doing the audition and stuff, was very much like, it felt like I was just happy to be there.
Do you get invited to, and I don't know, I'm sorry, do you get invited? Do you send a tape? Like, what is even like?
It's a whole bunch of levels of.
Okay.
Like, my manager at the time sent a tape in. I'd done a pilot with Bob Odenkirk, so I had a pretty good tape. And Marcy Klein over at SNL made Lauren watch it. They brought me in. First at a club, at the UCB, and then at the studio. And so I was already like, I can't believe I got this far.
Yeah.
It wasn't long after I'd been drumming in bands, So it was like exhilarating, and I would have been happy if that was it.
Wow.
I was like, this is SNL. Meeting Lauren. Couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in the auditions, you have one shot, like that's the audition. How long do they give you? What's
5
the
minutes?
format?
Maybe less than 5.
Is it just, not just like, but is it
They
equivalent to like, give me your best material for 5 minutes and let's...
More specific than that. They were like, give us 3 characters and 3 impressions, which I think I did 2 and 2. But, that's a parameter. They're like, this is what we're looking for. I did 2 characters, 2 impressions, and I practiced it over and over.
Yeah.
And I loved being there. I didn't feel nervous. I felt like, like Largo. I was like, I just want to contribute. If this, there's something about it that felt, just right.
Yeah.
And then I got it.
Are you getting feedback during the audition, by the way? Is there, who's like watching how many people?
There's some laughter and stuff.
Yeah.
No, it's go up there. Camera's on. It's on camera.
Okay.
Camera goes on. You do your thing, and there's a couple people laughing, and that's it.
And they're like, okay, Fred, thank you. We'll give you a call.
Not even that. Thank you. And you just go.
How long after the audition did you hear back?
I was walking to the elevators with the other auditioners, and one of the producers said, "Can I talk to you?" Which wasn't even a yes yet, but I was like, something's up.
Yeah. Oh, wait. Did you know you killed it, by the way, at the audition?
Oh, that's a good question. You know what? I'm going to say, I don't know. I thought I did as well as I could have in my book.
Okay.
I'm like, I did all the things that I had practiced. I didn't flub anything. I didn't drop anything. I had some drums up there with me. So I went back to my hotel going like, hey, good job. You did it. I wasn't like, oh, I should have. None of that. Yeah. None of that stuff. It was so, I did the best I could, and I thought I accomplished it.
Yeah.
And I didn't have an answer yet. And then we went to dinner, a bunch of us who auditioned, and I had a cell phone back then.
Right.
2002. And they called me.
At that night?
Yep.
Oh, man.
That night. And said, and the words were something like, we're going to try to work something out, which I was like, and I didn't tell anybody.
That was my next question, right?
No, I keep things real. I was like, let me wait till I'm on the show before I start like, hey, everybody. None of that.
What about the people, the fellow auditioners? Did you convey or communicate any of that?
No, not at that night, but they've all sort of gone on to do stuff anyway, which is kind of funny.
That's cool.
Everyone seems to have worked out.
There's a scene in Major League, which was one of my favorite movies growing up, still is one of my favorite movies. And it's like cut down day for the roster. And the Wesley Snipes character, they're going to open their locker. And if you get a red tag, it means you got to go talk to the manager and you're cut, essentially. So the old veteran catcher is like, listen, don't celebrate in front of guys who just got shot, meaning cut. You know what I mean? So he opens his locker, sees no tag, which means he made the team. And he just like puts his head down, walks outside the building, and then like does this dance outside the, because you can't celebrate. You don't want to acknowledge in front of people. So that's sort of what.
Even as far as like, just jinxing anything too. Like, you know what I mean? Like, wait until I'm on TV. Also like a lot of the noise that comes in the other direction, I just didn't want to, I wanted to do a good job. I don't want distractions. So my family and cousins and everyone is calling me like, hey, good luck on your first show. I don't want any of that. I just was like, I take SNL so seriously and love it so much. I'm like, I really thought, let me get to that first show and let me deliver. And then later, thank you. Oh, those first couple weeks, I was like.
How long is it after the audition before you start the show?
Mine was really late. I could maybe a couple weeks after.
Okay. And do you remember that first show?
Oh, yeah. I did one thing on it, which I'd done in my audition, and I did it at Weekend Update, which is a sort of safe zone. It's a sort of like, you don't have to rely on a whole sketch.
Okay.
The investment is quick.
Cut.
for the show. Little flash.
What was it?
Fericito, the timbale playing, who's based on Tito Puente.
Oh,
And I had done it a bunch at Largo, and so yeah,
you know.
I knew it and nice and quick.
Okay, do you feel at what point in your SNL upbringing do you feel like, okay, I'm here, I'm really part of this?
It took like 3 years, maybe. Takes a while.
Years, huh? Is it because, and maybe you don't need to say this, but is it because it's so insulated? No. Okay.
It's like very supportive place. I had nothing but a stellar, amazing time there. It's not that. It's this is like a deeper thing, but it's like, who am I? Who am I here? Am I the guy who does accents? You know what I mean? And so like my first I thought, oh, I'm someone who does sketches with Maya, which we did a lot of sketches together. And then she left. And so I wasn't quite like, and it took about 3 years till I was like, figured out, I think I'm this guy. And then once that happened, I felt better.
Can you tell me a little bit about the interplay between the cast and the writers and what goes into making those skits and just your contribution? Like somebody who's never been in that industry, the initial thought is like, sure, the writer's right, and then the actors perform, and that's it. But obviously with something like this, you have to have, not have to, but a lot of the characters are personal, or like you said that you've done before. How does that relationship work?
It works
Where's
like
that
everyone's on the same level. Writers and performers. So the performers write as well.
Yeah. And
it's very sort of like, it's a lot of feeling. You're up on the 17th floor. Me and this person have the same sense of humor. What are you doing tomorrow? You want to try to write something? Sure. I saw something on TV the other day. Yeah, let's do that. And then it's something that goes on all year where you're like, that worked for us. Let's try that again. Or let's try something different. It's because the show's live and because on Monday you start square one, because of that, it's this constant experiment. Constant.
Yeah.
And things that you thought are going to work might not work the second time. It's pretty amazing. It's like, and it's intense. It's all day, all night. Your whole week is like, is that really a good impression of that person? I don't know. Is that a good sketch idea? Oh. It's constant. You're just up all night, second guessing yourself. Can't get overly confident.
Yeah.
But it's fun. It's intense, but fun. So it's not like, what a drag, it's so much work. It's like, ooh, it's so much work. And what happens is, while you're doing it, you start to romanticize it. So I have, stubble, and I'm kind of like, I haven't eaten in a while or whatever. You start getting into that like drama of like, for our sketch.
Yeah.
And it's great. And you just develop these intense relationship with the writers. And these are the funniest people in the world. Like, it's these like geniuses of like the way that they look at the world. It's my favorite part of the show, just sitting there, listening to them talk.
You mentioned geniuses, and it's true. Comedy is such a work of art and so cerebral. There's an old adage, I don't even know if it's true, that it comes from either a place of sadness or loneliness. Mm-hmm. What do you think about that?
I don't know about that. I don't know if I agree. It's different for every joke.
Right. Good point. Okay.
And every sketch. So some of it I could say is like, comes from total celebration. I watched a sketch recently. Who was the host? Maybe Aubrey Plaza, which was like this is a recent one, a couple years ago.
Okay.
It was like it was a European beauty pageant. And the joke was that they all yelled too loud into the mic. They're like, they're like really screaming. And I'm like, whoever wrote that thought it was funny.
Yeah.
Watching it, made this observation. And that comes from celebration, I think. That's like, come on, that's nothing but fun.
Right. That's a good point. Yeah. That could be, and different inspiration for different things. Okay. What's it like when those lights go on? But it's really live from New York. It's Saturday night.
It's like, at the risk of sounding pretentious, it feels like electricity, like a jolt of electricity. It's like, it's a million things at once. it's like, take it easy, pace yourself, breathe, but get that moment.
You got to do it.
Do something. Like, don't just like wither and like, it's like so many things at once. Other people are relying on you. Dead quiet. You could hear the sort of mics moving around, and then as you hear the audience, you try not to lean into it. It's like, it really is like, but it's awesome.
Okay, when a sketch bombs.
Yeah.
And some do. Let's call it what it is.
Some.
Okay, you know what I really used to say? This is what I used to say. Sorry, you're always waiting for like those 3, like per episode, there would be like 3 sketches that you're like, that was good. And the rest were kind of like, but when the sketch bombs.
Yeah, sketches get cut.
From from what I see on TV?
Oh, yeah. There's a dress rehearsal at 8.
Okay.
So there's sketches you haven't even seen
that's pretty cool.
Bombed.
Yeah.
So hard that they didn't even put it on TV.
Wow. And do you know it as you feel it as it's happening, right?
Immediately.
But you've rehearsed, you've talked about it, you're with these comedic geniuses. It's a tough question, but why? If it works so well throughout the week.
It's the best education. It's like it is the best lesson of like letting go of your ego. It's the best. It's like, you think you're a genius? You think you did, an excellent Swedish accent?
Yeah.
No one cares. But it's great because Monday you try something else and you realize that you've got other things. You're like, you know what? I thought of something completely different.
Yeah.
That has nothing to do with that. So it's like a newspaper. Just throw it away and don't take it too hard. The early days, I would be like, oh no, what did I do wrong, dude? As time goes, you're like, oh my God, don't worry about it. So you start bonding with the other cast members.
Yeah.
So to this day, when I reminisce with old cast members, we laugh at how hard some things bombed. It's really bonding.
Yeah. Failure can have that effect. I mean, like, not perform, but in teams, I've been on some pretty lousy sports teams in my day or something, but now you have something to look back and laugh and bond about.
And even like, Seth Meyers brought up, sometimes you'd have some shows where your sketch bombs and you go backstage, you're like, oh, that audience is dead tonight.
Yeah.
Then you hear them laughing at another sketch. So you're like, oh no, they're there. They're ready. This sketch just didn't work.
Look in a mirror, buddy. No. Okay. So you were with SNL for 11 years?
Yep.
Which at the time was one of the longest tenures ever.
Now it's been...
Well, I mean, Keenan's there probably like 95 years, right? Like he'll be there into the next century.
Brilliant. And how great is Keenan?
So listen, so awesome. My buddy Tim, another good friend of mine, we always laugh because on paper, maybe, and I'm not disparaging him, but he's kind of always Keenan. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like a little, but it works. It always works. And like, he's hilarious. He's fun to watch. Seems like a good spirit, like good person that you want to like.
Every step of the way.
Yeah.
Every step of the way.
Yeah.
No matter what time of night, like early in the show, late in the show, how does he do it?
Yeah. Probably cliche question, but I got to ask. What were some of your favorite characters that you did or in your mind, your favorite?
Californians was always fun. I did this thing, Garth and Kat, with Kristen Wiig that was really fun.
Wiig's a good one. Okay.
I mean, they're all...
What about your Prince, Obama?
Prince was fun. I loved it. I loved doing Liberace. Was like a blast. That felt like I was really on SNL.
What do you mean?
Like, as we're doing the sketch, it felt like a sketch. It was so silly and over the top.
Yeah.
Bill Hader as Vincent Price.
Yeah.
That I was like, oh, this is really SNL. And I loved that.
And you feel that at the time, like as it's
happening.
Can I tell you one that's one of my favorite, that it's a tiny role, and I'll just tell you, Kings of Catchphrase Comedy. You had 3 separate characters in there, right? Lowrider, carry the 2, insert joke here. And it was such like, and again, like I've seen that it was the big, Keenan had a big part in it. I believe Jim Brewer, but it was these little snippets where you just say your cliche punchline where you're almost making fun of, not making fun of, but
Whatever.
stand-up comedians have their shtick, right? So it's always, that's not a low rider. This is a low rider. Like, so stuff like
What
that.
did I do?
So that's, dude, I'm like,
Is that what I said?
yeah, man, there's 3 main characters. Yeah. So carry the 2, insert joke here. I'll send it to you. But that was
How far? I could barely remember it.
because everybody was in it. And there was like 30. And it was basically at that era where there were like, I think it was CDs or discs of, comedy.
Oh yeah, there were so many different types. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, all right. Well, that was one that sticks out for me, even though it's such a
I'm
small
enjoying
part.
it. I don't. That's not a low rider. This is a low rider.
Yes. There you go. Okay. But which brings me to this next point. So your accents from across North America, or in your case, accents in general, I feel like it has to come from that background of Venezuelan German, Korean. But where does that come from? Your insane ability to be able to do every accent and
Because it's weird to talk about because I don't want to sound like I'm bragging. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
I'm like, well, my.
No, it's a talent, man.
But let's just say I think it's because my parents are not from here. It comes from moving around.
Yeah.
It even comes from like when I was in a band, we went all over the country. So I did get to hear a lot of accents. Yes. And I'm so into music that I think, oh my God, how do I say this? This is so corny. But I think my ear is a little bit, I'm listening.
Absolutely.
I'll put it that way. I'm listening a lot.
Yes,
So it's that kind of thing. It comes from in there somewhere.
Is that something you pride yourself on?
Pride myself. I don't.
As a comedian in your professional. I mean,
I like. Oh, let's say that like it's a tool that I'm happy to use.
Okay.
Accents and stuff, and the California one, I love doing it. I hear more and more different accents. I think you have an extremely strong Southern California accent.
Who, me?
Oh yeah.
Okay. That's interesting.
I almost feel like I know you're not connected to San Diego.
Yeah.
But I sometimes there's like, you're so California that you almost even sound further into San Diego.
Like, keep pushing it. I will say this. I always say the only place I would live outside LA is San Diego. So maybe there's something there.
But I have a question for you.
Of course.
Have you traveled around the world?
Yeah. I mean, not religiously, but fairly extensive. I've been some places. Yeah.
What's some place that you would move to that's not LA? Or how about this? That you would live in for 3 months?
Spain
Spain
and Mexico. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
Why?
I'm just curious because I think you feel the same way about LA that I do. I mean, I love LA so much. And then when I think of other places that I would want to live, they're not like LA.
No. And look, I love going this. You want to hear corny? This is the absolute truth. Okay. I love flying back into Burbank Airport, no matter where I go, on a fantastic vacation. And I know Burbank doesn't do international, but for instance, and here's why. Because no matter how much fun I have, what a great time, fulfilling experience anywhere else, I love getting off the plane on the tarmac in Burbank and just seeing the mountains and always a blue sky, like LA. And I'm like, oh man, I'm so glad to be home. It's such a beautiful thing. And
the best.
Yes.
And then when you leave that airport, kind of already on the 5 and you're like, oh, I like it here.
It's like a sneaky community airport.
That's the best.
Okay. Tell me about LA. Let's talk about LA for a minute.
I love it endlessly. My favorite city in the world.
Wow.
I'm saying that I want to live here.
What are the things? What is it for you?
For me?
Yeah.
It is the feeling when I'm driving and it's nighttime.
Yeah.
And I look out and the hills have little twinkly lights and you just go over a hill and that feeling, nice music. I'm like, this is life. This is what I want my life to be like. Just like, when it starts getting dark and there's like the silhouette of palm trees and it's like a little chilly.
Yeah.
And you're like, this place is magical.
I just used that. This is the truth. My wife is very honest and I use that phrase, the silhouette of palm trees at twilight, was what I said.
You
That when I was trying, because we were trying, where were we going the other day? We were going to, wasn't the Dodger game. It was somewhere recent and what we try to do now is I love freeways. Yes, I said I love freeways.
I'm the same.
Because they are so important arteries and getting around. Driving in LA is one of my favorite things. I know mass transit's really having a moment, making a movement, but I love driving in LA. I genuinely do. But taking the streets and going through all the different communities and everything, like Koreatown, Pico, that's where we're going. We're going to crypto.com to see a Kings game, actually. And we were driving through, I want to say Koreatown. And again, it was just like these tall palm trees, like poking over a building, like around a part of a building. And the sun's going down, had gone down. But it was just so gorgeous and romantic. And you're just like, man, I love this city. Like
totally
every day, every night. Like, and there are things, there are little, things that maybe you don't love so much about LA, but there's something.
No, there's something, that's a perfect description. And it's the things that I love about LA are, it's endless. Like every day is a new thing. I love the studios. I walk into some of these studios and I'm like, they're gigantic and historical.
Yes.
That's true. I can't believe I'm using these words. It's truly American. I'm like, this goes way back to the teens and the 20s or the 1920s, I'm like, this is American and gorgeous and like the sort of Art Deco history. And I love that. And I love the international communities,
most diverse city in the world, by the way.
And also not in a way that's like so prideful that it feels exclusive.
Right.
There's something about the communities that feels like, and come and hang out. Not like we're this. It's like, we're in LA.
Look, I always say this: Armenians, Koreans, Mexicans, Salvador. The list goes on. But whether you're in Sylmar, San Pedro, Pacific Palisades, downtown, you're going to find like everybody. And that's the beauty of it. And that's like, it's very international, but not necessarily exclusive. Yeah, I mean, you said that perfectly. So what are your favorite neighborhoods? I don't want to put you on the spot.
Oh, that's easy.
Because I don't even, okay, go.
I am partial to the East Side.
Okay.
I'm a musician, but I like things a little fancy.
Yeah.
So something about Los Feliz, Silver Lake, Atwater, Glendale, the Burbank because of the studios and stuff. So that little area.
You get into Highland Park at all?
Oh, it's great.
Okay. I just discovered Highland Park Bowl, which I can't believe took me this long to get. Have you been?
No.
First of all, oldest bowling alley in LA, 1927. And it was created during Prohibition because there was actually a speakeasy upstairs. So the bowling alley was like an excuse for people to go to the speakeasy. But what happened is 1933 Group, which is doing the best thing for LA. They're rehabilitating, restoring these old classic venues. They did Formosa Cafe, Idle Hour, which is in North Hollywood, and it's a whiskey barrel, perfect example of programmatic architecture, which was so important to LA. But they fully restored this old bowling alley from 1927. And it both feels like you're in 1927 and 2024 at the same time. Like they did it so tastefully and so like credibly, and it's just a great place. But Highland Park, great community, and all those East Side communities, which by the way, East Side technically, I know I'm gonna get a little guff for this, means east of the LA River. So some people will take umbrage on that description.
No, you stick to it.
Yeah.
You're an authority, and I'll say leaning towards the East Side. I'm with you. But I like it all, Downtown has its qualities. Culver City, like we just said.
I have a problem. Two communities I want to talk about real quick, just because you brought them up. Well, I have kind of an issue with downtown. I was there for the downtown Renaissance when it first, and again, for those that may not know, downtown was hollowed out, Bunker Hill, displaced. I think it was some insane amount, 60,000 people. Check me on that number, but it was an insane amount of people were displaced because they said it was urban blight and they were going to remake everything. And it took them 40 years to even really start rebuilding downtown. And when they did, it was Staples Center and LA Live. And my dad, who was an LA native, was like, why are you going downtown? There's nothing downtown unless you're going to go see a Laker game. But it developed and it got nicer, and, you know, lofts and adaptive reuse and restaurants and bars. But I feel like downtown, and it's cool, they're good places to go, but even still, 25 years later, doesn't really feel like downtown. And I want it to, and I know so many people want to do, but there's still like, it's not quite there. And obviously COVID was a big setback, and that sort of hollowed it out. But downtown is cool, but is how I always feel about it.
I hear you. The place where it lives for me is in the trying. So there's these little areas where it didn't get there yet, but when you go, they're really trying. Like you see a new shop and this new, like, they're sort of like, hey, and because of that attempt, I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna hang out here for a minute. Like,
you respect it, like, and reward it.
Downtown, it used to be like, it's almost like its own little center. Near the Arts District.
Okay.
And it's almost like its own like series of like factory buildings. Yeah. They used to have like a haunted mansion thing there, but they've really put a lot of money into it, into the parking and stuff, where I'm just like, I want to contribute to their attempt, is what I mean.
That's a good sentiment right there.
Yeah. So once in a while, go down there. There's, you know, there's some good restaurants, and that's like, I'm like, and also what's that market, that
Smorgasburg?
The one that's like indoor, outdoor, kind of like you go and there's like a food
Grand
court.
Central again.
That
Grand
one.
Central. Okay. That's still, I mean, that's pretty incredible.
That feels real.
Yeah.
And that feels like you can get it.
And it was, because that's 100 years old. I mean, again, it's been through some evolution and all that kind of stuff, but that is real.
That feels like solid.
Yeah.
And I would happily go there for lunch. So
right across the street from Bradbury Building, by the way. One of the most beautiful,
gorgeous,
haunting, amazing. Also, you mentioned Burbank. I will never take mix an excuse to kind of slander Burbank, even though I like Burbank. So I was born there, but it's so clean, which you would think is it is a good thing, but it feels eerie to me, where I almost feel like once you cross that invisible border, I'm like, am I in a movie set?
You're right.
Train store. There's a like model train store, vacuum repair, guns and ammo shop, Western bar. And I'm like, is this a movie set? And there's not even so much as like a gum wrapper on the
You're right. And also the color scheme. I'm like, it's a lot of brown and off brown.
Yeah.
I mean, I respect it, but I'm like, you could put some new colors in there somewhere. Like, that's so funny, because it's a good opportunity for people who are like always like, I can't find a space. I'm like, go to Burbank and make it a little, bring it, you know. That's so interesting. Train store. I know.
Yeah.
I'm like, you know, wow, this is a discussion. Because I'm a little bit like, I respect every age group, but Burbank, you're going to age yourself out. If it's all train, keep the train store, but let's have something next to it to like a little spice, just a little
spice is what it's lacking. Let's just call it, again, Burbank, I love you, I do, but
I go there all the time. I run a lot of errands there.
Yeah.
Love the airport. It needs a little...
By the way, do you know that airport's getting a renovation?
No.
Kind of scares me. The renderings are gorgeous, but like we said, it feels like that community airport. I know there's not a good bar. It's not a good restaurant. It's like a very, I don't know if rundown's the right word. It's a small community airport, but they're going to do some stuff there. So I'm very curious how that turns out, what that does to the community.
Do you worry that, like, does that mean they're going to try bigger planes? No, they won't allow it. They will never allow it. They would never.
Everything's a big deal to the neighbors when they change the flight routes, all that kind of stuff.
They're not.
You know, the sign also that I see at Burbank Airport where it says "Fly quietly." Do you know that one?
Yeah.
And I was like, how's a plane supposed to fly? I don't know. Okay, talk to me about Portlandia. What that meant, Carrie Brownstein, your relationship, Sleater Kinney.
Sleater Kinney, my favorite band in the world.
Okay.
Carrie and I became best of friends, and I would go to Portland to visit, and instead of making music, we decided to make sketches.
Okay.
For no reason. just made these videos while I was on SNL.
Yeah.
And it sort of transformed into a sketch show. And IFC took it on, and, you know, I still have a place there. I go there all the time.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Burbank to Portland Airport,
Great.
it is like not traveling.
Oh, that whole West Coast like swing, even Seattle, Oakland, like all that.
Oakland.
Yeah.
It's like
Sure.
it's like
Vegas.
it's like train stations. You're just like, you don't feel stressed out.
So cool. Yeah.
I know they're working on it, but that LAX, they got to figure that out. I know they're working on it.
To be honest,
Something.
What? I don't know. They can't.
Why can't they have separate entryways per airline or something? Turn it into like everyone going through that same thing is going to kill. It's going to kill us all. It's going to be the death of us.
They've talked about a monorail. They've talked about a subway. It's tough. But okay, so Portland, do you love Portland?
Love Portland.
What is it about Portland?
It's moodiness. It's like cloudy and, you know, cozy.
Yeah.
And the air is really nice, and it's mysterious.
Mysterious.
Yeah, there's like dark green and sort of small, so it's like a city, but it's like on the smaller side. And I have a lot of friends there, so it's a kind of mixture of, you know, it's like it balances LA out a little bit for me.
Yeah. Oh, that's an interesting.
You know,
how proud are you of what you accomplished with Portlandia? Because
I can die. I feel like I can die because it's everything I wanted to say. It's all the music stuff I love. It's with my soulmate, Carrie. And it's the kind of comedy I wanted to make. So it's scary because I'm like, that's what I wanted out of life.
Wow.
And I did it. So I'm like, now I just enjoy myself with all these projects.
Yeah.
But I no longer have that, like, but I got to show the world that I do this thing.
Good job. So I'm
okay.
That goes on the tombstone.
Well, that goes on the tombstone at Hollywood Forever Cemetery.
Oh, wow.
I have a plot there.
Oh, you really do?
Yep.
Oh, good job. Hopefully that's up for years. Okay, Los Espookys.
Yeah, so I didn't mean to make it grim.
No,
it's saying,
dude.
When I say I love LA.
And something about Hollywood Forever, to tell you the truth, makes it less grim because it's almost, I don't want to say celebratory. But
it's lighter.
Yeah, there's something about that with that cemetery. And again, they show movies there. People visit to tourist like spots. So
they make it fun, of all things. But they do. They do. They kind of, you know, it's a sort of Tim Burton version of Burbank, Tim Burton.
Oh, good call. Very good call. Okay, so Los Espookys. Oh, talk to me. How'd that come about? Because that's interesting. And then for me, for somebody who doesn't know Spanish language, but, you know, really, I think it does appeal to, or did appeal to a larger audience and maybe wasn't even targeted towards a certain demographic. How do you explain it? How'd you pitch that? How'd that come about? Like,
the original thought was I really want to do something in Spanish.
Okay.
Where it's not totally just about, you know, the language. It's something other than just that.
Yeah.
So I wanted to do something in Spanish. And then I thought, I want to do something like, there's like a goth thing happening in the sort of South American and Mexican community that I'm like, I don't see enough of. And that goes for LA too. Like I'm like, there's a goth thing happening here.
Absolutely.
Big time. So it came from that. And I just wanted to mix the sort of spookiness and gothiness of South American and Central American culture and not just make it about the food.
Yeah,
you know,
right.
Or just the music. And then I started working with Julio Torres and Ana Fabrega, who added to that vision of just weirdness. Like, how about the weird version and the spooky version of what we think, you know, that culture is?
Yeah. So how do you pitch it? How did that even get off the ground?
The way that I pitched it to you, I pitched it to HBO in this way that was like, I wasn't like, you gotta do this. I was more like, what can I do with this?
Yeah.
can I go pitch it to the, Spanish language HBO? And Amy Gravitt over there, to her credit, was like, no, let's do it for regular HBO. Let's try it. So it was always like a sort of experiment. Like, what do you think of this? And the reaction was great. Everywhere I go, people seem
groundbreaking. I don't know. And again, I'm not like this huge pop culture consumer, but to somebody like me, it's like so different. Just the way it looked, what it was, Spanish language, but not necessarily for people who are fluent in Spanish, or speak Spanish. But like, it seemed groundbreaking. I don't know if that's too heavy of a term, but definitely carved out new ground.
I'm glad we got to do it. We shot it in Chile.
Okay. Wow. Didn't even. Oh, I got to bring this up. I know we're running low, but I got to bring this up. Everything that's going on in Hollywood right now, the industry, I've used the word devastating. Hollywood's collapse, not to be dramatic because LA is more than just Hollywood, but I have this fear of Hollywood as an industry becoming Detroit to the car industry, right? Where just everybody I know that's in that business, I just saw somebody on Saturday. I haven't worked in 21 months. Somebody's like, I go to Atlanta, Mexico City, Toronto, Budapest, basically Vegas, New Mexico, everywhere except LA, everywhere except Hollywood. What the heck are your thoughts on that? And I know the governor just made a new proposal to blah, 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 tax credits, which doesn't go into effect until July of next year. So people are going to be sitting around twiddling their thumbs. But give me just any thoughts on that. And like, what?
Dude, I can just tell you my experience.
Yeah.
I was able to do this today.
Yeah.
Because I don't start work until next week. Meaning, for me to work, I've got to travel. I'm going to Ireland. Most of my jobs, no exaggeration, other cities, other countries, most of them. Other cities, other countries. I text with my friends, and every time we say, can we do want to get together or whatever, if they're working, it means they're out of town.
Wow.
So it's not, I'm not saying like, hey, all my friends are in show business. I mean, like,
we all have peers and colleagues, of course.
Peers and colleagues, every single time. Oh man, I'm in Winnipeg. That's a text from yesterday.
Yeah,
I'm in Winnipeg. It's everywhere. So every time I hear of some project I'm going to work on, here comes the flight information.
Yeah,
I love flying. Fantastic. I'm not complaining, but boy, is it rare to work in this city. It's so rare that when I walk into a studio here, it's like, whoa, that's right.
Crazy. That's so sad. Because this is LA. So do you think there's anything on the horizon? Are people hopeful, or even worse, are people giving up and they're like, F it, I'm going to move. I'm out of here. Like there's nothing going on and I don't even have hope anymore.
Well, for me, it's the reason it's not an issue is because I love LA so much. I'm like, I don't care about work. I'm like, then I don't know. This is where I'll live, and I guess I commute to Ireland. But to answer your question, I don't know because I'm this little. I'm like, I don't know how the world works.
Yeah.
I don't know how industry works. I still get surprised if a Best Buy is closed, and I'm like, but I always get my electronics here. So I don't understand economics.
Right.
So I have I'm like, I can only hope. But everyone I know dreams of the gig where we could stay in LA, and it does not happen.
I got to tell you, this is the truth again. I used to say I'm the only person born and raised in LA that had nothing to do with the industry, but I'll be the first to say that I believe LA needs a strong Hollywood to be at its best.
Absolutely.
So it's not the only industry that built this town, but it's the industry that built this town. Let's call it what it is.
Well, let's say tourists come here.
Yes.
Oh, boy. Right? If the tourists come here, they look at the Hollywood sign. That's what it is. So let's also there's so many sound stages. I'm like,
that's a big thing too. All the studios.
These are good sounds. I'm like,
City,
what?
Radford. Sony, Paramount, Warner.
A million.
On.
All over the place.
Okay. As we wrap this up, what I usually do at the end of a show is one thing to do in LA this week. Okay. And now I don't want to put you on the spot, but you're home, you're with or without, that doesn't matter. But is there a secret place, a hidden gem, or just your favorite thing to do in LA besides drive around? Because we discussed that, and that is absolutely mine.
Yeah, I'm gonna do 3, and then you guys
Oh,
can edit out which ones you don't want to use.
No, give them all, as many as possible.
Find a sushi place in the valley, and you'll know which ones to go to. There's enough of them, but I go because it's the best sushi in the world, in my opinion. I've been to Japan. There's something about sushi in LA that is just the best. Somewhere in Ventura Boulevard, there's a couple. I'm not gonna, you'll just look up to see which one's going. That's thing number 1.
Sushi Row, by the way, Ventura Boulevard, highest concentration of sushi restaurants in the Western Hemisphere, and that's on Ventura Boulevard, Studio City. So
okay, I didn't know that, so I'm glad I teed you up to like have it.
Yeah,
this is why I appreciate you in life. Thank you. That's great to know.
Yeah.
This is going to sound almost redundant or cliche, but I love Amoeba Records.
Hey.
Amoeba is really user-friendly. They're not going to make you feel like you don't know anything about music. There's nothing snobby about it. It's colorful and fun, and they have their recommendations. Here's some, if you don't have any records, they're like, here's some records that, are good to have. Wonderful place. But if you're a nerd and you're way into records, they have all of that too. Deep cuts, all kinds of jazz and soundtracks and rock and everything. They have equipment. Want a turntable? They have it. It's a really wonderful place to be.
Amoeba, legendary, and I don't want to cut this off because this is brilliant, but I gotta mention, you did some DJ stuff. Aren't you? Yeah, I've done like under the freeway kind of. I've done impromptu rave sort of situation.
Well, I've done some of that, but I've also played at some record stores in LA.
Yeah.
Doing covers, punk rock covers on guitar. My reasoning is I want LA to be a cool place to be. Yeah. Not that I'm the definition of cool, but I want this to be a place where you can go to a record store and see someone doing punk rock covers.
Okay.
That's my reasoning behind it. And there's a bunch that I've done all around town.
Wow.
But I love the record stores here.
Okay.
I don't want to make it seem like, hey, I'm just saying I want this to be a fun, easy town.
Okay.
Thing number 3, we talked about it earlier, but I'm going to plug it one more time. The Museum of Jurassic Technology. It is a special, special place to be.
Now
Culver City.
Absolutely need to go. Culver City. Look, Fred Armisen, thank you for joining us on In a Minute with Evan Lovett. This was awesome. We could talk for hours more. There's so much stuff I didn't even get to, but I want to respect your time. And thank you again. And everybody for listening to this episode, thank you so much for the support. You know what to do. Hit the like button, subscribe, share with your friends, and support all of Fred Armisen's work, past, present, anything in the future that we should look out for? Anything upcoming?
A bunch of stuff, a million things. But I'm going to do an LA in a minute about this plant. Hey, what's up? I'll tell you in a minute. What is going on with this plant? You see this plant all over the place, but no one really knows what it's about. It's got green and it's got brown on it. But is it a plant? Let's get into it.
Let's get into it.
All right. Oh, I should have ended it with that. All right.
Thanks, guys.
That was my impression.